5 hidden signs a narcissist is deeply suffering. Most people assume narcissists move through life untouched by guilt, pain, or emotional struggle. They appear confident, emotionally detached, and strangely unaffected by the damage they leave behind. From the outside, they often look like people who always win and rarely suffer consequences. But beneath that carefully constructed image, the reality can look very different. Because narcissism is often built not on confidence, but on protection from deep emotional discomfort. The grandiosity people see on the surface frequently exists to hide something much more fragile underneath. And while narcissists may hide their suffering extremely well, it often leaks out in subtle ways. Today, we are exploring 5 hidden signs that a narcissist may be suffering far more than they admit. Sign number 1. They become increasingly obsessed with validation. Most people enjoy compliments and appreciation from time to time in their lives. But for narcissists, validation often feels less like enjoyment and more like emotional survival. Their sense of self-worth is frequently tied to outside admiration and approval from others. When attention decreases, their emotional stability often begins decreasing alongside it. This is why some narcissists become increasingly desperate for recognition as they get older. They may constantly seek praise for achievements that happened years or even decades ago. They may become unusually sensitive to criticism that other people would quickly dismiss. Even small signs of rejection can trigger reactions that seem completely disproportionate to the situation. That reaction often reveals something hidden beneath the surface of confidence. Because truly secure people do not depend entirely on strangers to feel valuable. When validation becomes a necessity rather than a pleasure, suffering is often hiding nearby. The endless search for admiration becomes exhausting even for the narcissist themselves, because no amount of praise ever feels permanent enough to create lasting peace. Sign number 2. They become increasingly angry about other people's success. Healthy people can usually celebrate the achievements of friends and family members. But narcissists often experience another person's success as a personal threat to their identity. Someone else's promotion may feel like evidence of their own failure. Someone else's happy relationship may feel like proof that they are losing value. Instead of inspiration, they often experience comparison and emotional discomfort. This is why some narcissists seem strangely irritated during moments that should feel joyful. They may minimize accomplishments or immediately redirect attention back toward themselves. They may criticize successful people in ways that seem unnecessary or excessive. Underneath that criticism often lives something they would never openly admit. Envy is frequently one of the most painful emotions for narcissistic personalities to experience, because envy forces comparison, and comparison threatens the image they work hard to maintain. The anger you see externally may actually be masking internal suffering and insecurity. Sign number 3. They struggle deeply with emotional emptiness. One of the least discussed experiences in narcissism is chronic emotional emptiness. Many narcissists spend years constantly seeking stimulation, attention, or excitement from outside sources. Silence can feel uncomfortable in ways they struggle to explain even to themselves. Being alone with their own thoughts may create anxiety rather than peace. This is why some narcissists move rapidly from relationship to relationship without much time alone. It is why they may constantly seek admiration, conflict, drama, or excitement. The activity itself is not always the goal they are chasing. Sometimes they are simply trying to avoid what happens when everything becomes quiet, because quiet moments often force people to face emotions they normally avoid. And for narcissists, those emotions can include shame, regret, loneliness, and self-doubt. The emptiness beneath the performance can become surprisingly painful over time, especially when external success stops providing the emotional relief it once provided. Sign number 4. They become increasingly isolated as time passes. Many narcissists are skilled at attracting people during the early stages of relationships. Charm, confidence, and charisma can create powerful first impressions very quickly. But maintaining relationships often requires accountability, empathy, and emotional reciprocity. Those are qualities that narcissists frequently struggle to sustain over long periods. As years pass, relationships sometimes begin disappearing one by one. Friends drift away after repeated disappointments and broken trust. Family members create boundaries to protect their emotional well-being. Former partners stop returning calls and messages altogether. Eventually, some narcissists find themselves surrounded by far fewer people than before. The loneliness that follows can become extremely difficult to acknowledge openly. because admitting loneliness often feels too close to admitting vulnerability. So instead, they may pretend isolation is simply a personal choice. But isolation chosen freely feels very different from isolation that slowly finds you. Behind the image of independence, there may be enormous emotional suffering. Sign number 5. They react strongly to aging and loss of status. Aging is difficult for many people regardless of personality type or background. But for narcissists, aging can create unique emotional challenges and fears. Their identity may be strongly connected to attractiveness, success, influence, or admiration. When those things begin changing, emotional stability often changes with them. A younger competitor may suddenly feel deeply threatening to their self-image. Physical aging may create anxiety that feels impossible to control or reverse. Retirement may remove a source of status they depended on for decades. Social attention may become less intense than it once was. For many narcissists, these changes feel larger than simple life transitions. They can feel like attacks on the very identity they spent years building. And when identity begins cracking, suffering often emerges through anger or defensiveness. The sadness underneath rarely appears openly for other people to see. But that does not mean it is absent from their experience. The difficult truth about narcissism is that suffering and harmful behavior can exist together. Someone can hurt others while also carrying deep emotional pain themselves. Understanding that reality does not excuse manipulation or abuse in any way, but it can explain behaviors that otherwise seem confusing or contradictory. Many narcissists spend their lives running from emotions they never learned to process safely. They chase admiration because self-acceptance feels unreachable without outside confirmation. They chase status because inner security never fully arrives on its own. They chase control because vulnerability feels far too dangerous to risk. And sometimes the very defenses that protected them become the source of their suffering. The walls that keep pain out also keep connection out as well. The mask that protects their image slowly separates them from authenticity. The constant performance eventually becomes exhausting to maintain every single day. That is perhaps the hidden tragedy that many people never consider. The person who appears most in love with themselves may secretly know themselves the least. And the person who seems impossible to hurt may be working hardest to hide pain. Because sometimes the loudest confidence is simply fear wearing a very convincing disguise.